The sun blazed down on the city streets, its heat radiating off the pavement, and making the already bustling urban landscape feel even more oppressive. Cars honked in the distance, people rushed past one another, and the noise of the city swelled into a constant hum. This was a place where the busy rhythm of life never paused, where the sidewalks were often filled with pedestrians oblivious to the faces they passed. But on this particular afternoon, the streets weren't just crowded with ordinary passers-by. A major public event was taking place nearby. Cameras flashed as reporters huddled around prominent political figures. It was the kind of scene that commanded attention, a rally for a high-profile leader, the kind of event that drew in thousands. The eyes of the city and the country were fixed on this moment. Donald Trump, surrounded by a team of security guards and aides, prepared for his next big speech. His motorcade was just around the corner, and as usual, the crowd was eagerly awaiting his arrival. The air was charged with anticipation. A polished convoy of black SUVs and limousines had been carefully arranged, with every movement choreographed to ensure his safety and the smooth operation of his public appearance. This was an environment that screamed power, prestige, and an unshakable sense of control. No one expected anything to interrupt the precision of this orchestrated moment. Not today, not in the middle of a campaign rally. But life doesn't always follow plans. In the middle of all the media frenzy and the flurry of the political machine, an unexpected moment began to unfold. The city, often seen as indifferent to the struggles of its most vulnerable, hid a truth that wasn't part of the polished image being displayed in front of the cameras. And in that moment, something outside the ordinary caught the attention of a man who, for all his public persona and political ambition, had never been seen as a figure for compassion. As the motorcade slowly made its way down the street, the noise of the rally faded, and something stopped Donald Trump in his tracks. Through the tinted windows of his black Cadillac, the chaos of the world outside began to feel like a distant hum. His gaze was drawn toward a girl sitting on the sidewalk, a small figure barely noticed by most of the people around her. The movement in his seat was slight but intentional. His eyes locked onto the girl's position on the street, and for a moment, the weight of everything happening around him seemed to fade. It wasn't supposed to happen. He was supposed to glide through this scene, just another part of the parade. Yet, here was this girl, alone in the heat, her presence cutting through the noise of the city. The decision to stop wasn't premeditated. In a life spent navigating complex political strategies, managing schedules, and giving speeches that resonated with millions, a moment like this was not part of the script. But in that brief pause, the gravity of what he was seeing, and perhaps more importantly, who he was seeing, began to change the direction of the day. Something pulled him toward that sidewalk, compelling him to make a choice that no one around him had anticipated. The young girl sat there, withering under the heat. The sun beat down relentlessly, and the sound of the bustling city seemed to blur into a dull thrum, as though it couldn't be bothered to acknowledge the girl's suffering. She wasn't asking for much. A simple cardboard sign held in her small hands read, "Please help, my family needs water." It wasn't a cry for money or attention, just a quiet, desperate request for something as basic as water, a necessity most people took for granted in a city that never seemed to stop. But here she was, with her fragile frame and tired eyes, overlooked by the hurrying people around her. The girl's disability was apparent. She wasn't standing or walking. Her legs remained still, caught in a wheelchair that looked like it had seen better days. She had long dark hair, a ponytail that swung loosely with each slight shift, and a face that looked far older than her years, perhaps because of the weariness carried in her expression. Her clothes were worn, faded from the sun, and the cardboard sign she held was clearly handmade, with edges that were rough from too much handling. Passing pedestrians barely spared her a glance. Some noticed her, but the rush of the world around them was too fast, too loud for them to pay her any more attention. The relentless forward motion of the city kept people focused on their destinations, their meetings, their appointments. A few offered brief, empty stares, but none stopped. The girl's presence, desperate and poignant, was swallowed by the noise of a city too busy to notice the struggles of its most vulnerable. And yet, somehow, she caught the attention of one man. The sound of the motorcade echoed through the street, signaling the arrival of the prominent political figure whose arrival everyone had been waiting for. As the cars rolled to a stop, the noise of the crowd grew louder, people gathered around to catch a glimpse. But as Trump's motorcade came into view, his eyes were already fixed on the girl. For a moment, everything else in the city seemed to fade, and there she was, standing out in the midst of all the chaos. Trump's face, usually focused on political matters and a crowd of well-wishers, softened. His eyes lingered on the girl, and it was clear that something about the scene wasn't sitting right with him. Amid all the cameras and security guards, in a world of controlled appearances, there was something deeply human about this moment that spoke to him. The heat, the girl's condition, the desperation in her eyes, Trump saw all of it. Without saying a word to his security team, he made a decision that was as sudden as it was shocking. The motorcade, which had been moving smoothly just seconds ago, came to an abrupt stop. The bodyguards and aides scrambled to adjust, but Trump was already moving toward the sidewalk. As he stepped out of the vehicle, the noise of the rally, the clamor of the crowd, and the hum of the city seemed to vanish. There was only one thing on his mind now: the girl on the sidewalk. The motorcade came to a sudden halt. The hum of engines was replaced by the shuffling of footsteps, the hurried whispers of aides, and the shocked stares of security personnel. It was not part of the plan, nothing about this moment was supposed to happen. The crowd had anticipated a speech, not this strange interruption. Trump, who had spent much of his career maintaining a public persona of toughness and unyielding control, seemed almost different in this moment. With a commanding presence, yet softened by something unspoken, he pushed open the door of his car and stepped into the midday heat. His aides, momentarily stunned, scrambled to catch up with his unexpected decision. They had been trained to follow strict procedures, ensuring that his every move was calculated, every interaction planned. But Trump's gaze was locked on the girl, a tiny figure alone in the chaotic city. Ignoring the usual security protocols, Trump made his way toward the sidewalk, his heavy footsteps somehow becoming quiet in his mind as the air seemed to thicken with each step. People watched, many uncertain of what they were witnessing. Was this a staged moment, another act to charm the media? Or was it something else entirely? Trump approached the girl without fanfare. There were no cameras pushing in for dramatic close-ups. It was just him and her, this brief moment of quiet connection in the middle of the noise. As he knelt down to her level, the crowd fell into a strange hush. The girl looked up at him, her tired eyes meeting his with uncertainty, but also a flicker of hope. "What's your name?" Trump asked gently, his voice not booming as it often did in speeches, but soft, as if trying to understand something deeper. The girl hesitated, then softly said her name. Trump nodded and asked, "What happened? Why are you out here alone?" Her voice, small but steady, explained the dire situation she was in. She hadn't had a drop of water all day and had been unable to find any help due to her disability. The warmth from the sun, the exhaustion, the hunger, all of it had begun to overwhelm her. She had simply been hoping for something small, a bottle of water to drink, a simple act of kindness. Trump listened carefully, his face devoid of the usual hardness, as he absorbed her words. There was no rush, no agenda behind his questions. For a moment, he simply saw a young girl in need, no politics, no image to uphold, just a human being who had fallen through the cracks of the system. Reaching into a bag carried by one of his aides, Trump pulled out a bottle of water and offered it to the girl. "Here," he said, handing it to her. "I'm going to make sure you have everything you need, a place to stay, and more help soon." His words were direct but had a genuine undertone. The offer wasn't just about giving her something to drink, but about ensuring that this moment didn't end as quickly as it had begun. The girl, blinking in disbelief, took the water. Her hands shook slightly as she raised it to her lips, but her eyes never left Trump's face. The act seemed small, yet in the grander context of the city, this simple exchange was something profound. It was a gesture of care from a man who had spent his career being perceived as the very opposite of compassionate, yet here he was, offering a lifeline to someone who needed it most. The moment was nothing short of shocking. Donald Trump, the man known for his brashness, controversial statements, and hard-edged political demeanor, had just made an uncharacteristically soft move. For years, the media and public had been accustomed to seeing Trump in one light, a businessman turned politician with a reputation for aggression and, at times, callousness. Yet, in this one moment, he was something else entirely. As the scene unfolded, reporters and bystanders caught snippets of the interaction. The unexpectedness of the act, the kindness that seemed so out of place, left many in awe. Trump, who had rarely shown vulnerability or softness in public, was suddenly a different person. The public's response was swift, with social media and news outlets buzzing with the footage of the moment. It wasn't just about the fact that Trump had helped the girl, it was the complete contrast to everything people thought they knew about him. The reactions were divided. Some praised Trump for his unexpected display of kindness, calling it a rare and humane moment in a world often dominated by political theatrics. To many, this was a glimpse of something more compassionate beneath the persona they were used to. People shared the moment widely on social media, applauding the gesture as proof that anyone, no matter their public reputation, could step up in a moment of need. But not everyone was ready to accept this change. Critics quickly emerged, questioning Trump's motives. Was this truly an act of kindness, or was it a carefully orchestrated move to improve his public image? Some pundits argued that his decision to stop wasn't out of genuine concern for the girl, but part of a broader political strategy, an attempt to soften his image before a crucial election. Media outlets dissected every word, every movement, as they tried to determine whether this was an authentic moment, or just another piece of political theater. In the midst of the media frenzy, the girl's story began to emerge. Her name was Amara, and she had been living on the streets for months. Her disability made it difficult for her to navigate the world, and despite her best efforts, she had been left behind by the city's resources. She had faced neglect from social services, and the lack of accessible infrastructure for people like her had only made her situation worse. The moment of kindness, while small in itself, sparked a conversation that many had long avoided. What happens when people like Amara are left behind by society? Amara expressed her gratitude in interviews, her voice steady despite the challenges she had faced. "I never thought someone like him would stop for me. He didn't just give me water, he made me feel like I mattered," she said, her words spreading across the nation. Her story, one of systemic neglect, soon became a part of a wider discussion on homelessness, disability rights, and the need for more compassionate policies that could prevent others from experiencing the same struggles. The moment Trump stopped for Amara went far beyond the simple act of giving her water. It became a catalyst for a broader societal conversation, one that prompted people to think about the systemic issues that led to this girl's struggle. And whether or not people believed Trump's gesture was genuine, it became clear that in a world full of noise and division, kindness was a powerful thing to witness. In the days following the unexpected interaction between Trump and the homeless disabled girl, the moment began to reverberate far beyond the streets where it had unfolded. Trump, ever the strategist, swiftly capitalized on the incident. He publicly announced a new initiative aimed at addressing homelessness and providing better resources for disabled individuals. The announcement was made during a highly publicized rally, where Trump described the initiative as part of his broader vision for improving the lives of the most vulnerable in society. His plan included increased funding for homeless shelters, expanded access to healthcare and disability services, and reforms aimed at making public spaces more accessible for those with disabilities. He framed it as an urgent call to action, emphasizing that no one should be left behind in a country as prosperous as the United States. The announcement drew mixed reactions almost immediately. Supporters rallied behind the initiative, praising Trump for his commitment to tackling the issues of homelessness and disability. For them, it seemed like a long overdue acknowledgement of the needs of those often marginalized by society. On the other hand, detractors were quick to label the initiative as a publicity stunt, arguing that the sudden announcement was little more than an attempt to salvage Trump's public image. They pointed to the controversy that often surrounded his administration and questioned whether his actions could ever be fully sincere. Critics were skeptical about the true intentions behind his decision to take action on these issues, suspecting that the public spectacle with the girl had been strategically timed. Yet, despite the controversy, one thing was clear: the issue of homelessness and disability was suddenly thrust into the spotlight, gaining national attention like never before. For the girl, now identified as Amara, the aftermath of the encounter was life-changing. After the moment went viral, she was quickly placed in a specialized rehabilitation center where she received the medical attention and care she desperately needed. The center provided not only physical rehabilitation but also emotional support, helping Amara to cope with the trauma of her past life on the streets. Her story became a symbol of hope for many, particularly for individuals with disabilities who faced similar challenges. News outlets from across the country interviewed her, and she became the face of the movement calling for more compassionate policies and resources for vulnerable populations. Amara's newfound visibility sparked a wave of support for disabled individuals and those experiencing homelessness, with many expressing their admiration for her resilience. In interviews, she spoke of the relief she felt not just from the medical care, but from the sense that her life now mattered. "I never thought someone like him would stop for me. I never thought anyone would," she said. "But now I know that there are people out there who care, and that gives me hope." Her story, shared across social media platforms, was a reminder of the harsh realities faced by so many. It touched the hearts of people across the country, who were moved by the image of a young girl, abandoned by society, receiving a moment of care from a powerful public figure. For many, the aftermath of this event was a call to action, urging them to examine the systems that allowed such neglect to happen in the first place. As the dust settled from the dramatic scene, the reverberations continued to echo through the public discourse. The story of Trump's unexpected act of kindness was not just about him or Amara. It was about the wider implications of homelessness, disability rights, and societal neglect. The moment had sparked a conversation that had long been ignored by many in positions of power. Whether people believed it was a publicity stunt or a genuine act of compassion, one thing remained clear: the issues at hand were real, and they needed to be addressed. Trump's actions, while controversial, had brought these issues to the forefront in a way that few others could have. His words and subsequent actions became a rallying cry for some, while others remained doubtful of his true motives. But regardless of the debate surrounding his actions, the moment left an undeniable impact on the national conversation. The public was no longer able to ignore the plight of the homeless or the disabled, and for many, that was the real victory. Amara's life, as a result of this unexpected encounter, had improved dramatically. With the resources and support she had been given, she began to rebuild her future, and her story inspired countless others facing similar struggles. Her tale of survival against the odds resonated with people across the nation, serving as a beacon of hope. In the end, Trump's gesture, no matter how it was perceived, served as a turning point in the conversation about social issues. It reminded the public that kindness, however unexpected, could have a lasting effect. Amara's transformation became a symbol of the power of compassion, and the ripple effect of that moment continued to be felt long after the cameras had turned away. It was a reminder that even in the most unlikely of circumstances, a simple act of kindness could change a life, and in this case, shift the direction of a national dialogue.